Hello, super smart second graders. Today we'll be working in language arts. Unit 8, Machines at Work. Lesson 4, Machines at Work, Write Portfolio. This portfolio project is an assignment that you'll complete at home and turn into your homeroom teacher for a grade. My name is Mrs. C. I'm going to help you with this portfolio because it spans many units and many lessons before you turn it in. Let's look at the first unit and lesson where you'll begin. I am in Unit 5, Lesson 1. We don't turn this assignment in until Unit 8, Lesson 4. So there's a lot that we need to cover today, but I've cut out everything extra. We're only going to focus on your writing. Here's our first objective. In this section, you will tell what a narrative is and identify the parts it has. Our keywords are characters, the people or animals that a story is about, narrative, a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end, narrator, the voice that tells what happens in a story, and setting, where and when a story takes place. What is a narrative? Sometimes a writer wants to tell about something that happens. They write a narrative. A narrative tells a story. Some stories are true, others are made up by the writer. Every narrative has these parts. Characters are the people or animals the story is about. The setting is where the story takes place and when the story happens. And the narrator tells what happens to the characters. Sometimes the narrator is also a character in the story. In this lesson, if you go back to Unit 5, Lesson 1, there's a video that you can watch, and then you can think about the different parts of the story with your learning coach. Parts of a story. Every story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. The beginning names the characters and the setting. It may also tell about a problem a character has. So it's like our introduction. It introduces us to all of the things we need to know before we read. The middle tells what the characters do. A character may try to solve their problem. And the end tells what happens to the characters. Gennard is in second grade. He wrote a story about Dagon and his grandpa. Read Gennard's story. So here is what Gennard wrote. Look, he's got a title. You can see each letter of the title is capitalized or uppercase. He also wrote by Gennard Mason. That's because he's the author. So we're going to write a narrative similar to this one. A Canoe Ride by Gennard Mason. Dagon and Poppy got up early. They put on their warmest jackets. Then they walked down to the dock and strapped on their life vests. Poppy slid the canoe into the water and they climbed in. The lake was still as they paddled. They watched bugs skim over the water. Then they spotted 2 deer on the shore. After a while, they saw a small speck high in the sky. The speck got bigger and bigger as it circled closer. All of a sudden it swooped down and grabbed a fish right out of the lake. With a few flaps of its wings, the beautiful bird flew off with its food. Dakin and Poppy smiled as they paddled back to the dock. They couldn't believe their luck. They had seen a real bald eagle. So think about these questions. Who is the story about? Those will be your characters. Where and when does the story happen? That will be your setting. And does the character tell the story? Is the character in the story the narrator? Think about and talk about those questions with your learning coach. Soon you will write a story like Gennard. Read more about what you will do. In this lesson, if you click right here in Unit 5, Lesson 1, you'll be able to find the narrative text portfolio rubric. I'm also going to go over it with you at the end of the video, just so we can check and make sure we have everything we need. Now I'm moving on to Unit 5, Lesson 2. Here's our new objective. In this section, you will list topics for a story so that you can talk about them with your learning coach. A topic is what a story is about. Choosing a story topic. Every story is about something. What a story is about is its topic. A story topic is different from an informational text topic. Informational text is about real people, places, or things. A story can be about anything at all. It does not have to be real. Careful writers make a plan before they write a story. First, they think about the topics they would like to write about. Before he wrote his story, Gennard made a list of topics. He talked about his list with his learning coach. Read Gennard's list of story topics. So here's our example. These are all of the things he thought he might like to write about before he chose the one thing that he did write about. So here were his different ideas. A girl and her aunt bake cookies. A dog is lost in the woods. A boy and his grandpa go on a canoe ride. Hey, that's the one he picked. Astronauts have a leak in their spaceship. A cat learns to drive a car. How do you think making this list of topics helped Gennard? Topic and title. Read Gennard's story again. Think about how the title helps readers understand his topic. So his title is A Canoe Ride. Do we think the story is about them going on a canoe ride? Absolutely. Let's read and let's think about how that title helps us know what the story will be about. Dagan and Poppy got up early. They put on their warmest jackets. Then they walked down to the dock and strapped on their life vests. Poppy slid the canoe into the water and they climbed in. The lake was still as they paddled. So I'm not going to read this whole story again to save time, but listen to that. This is definitely about them taking a canoe ride. So the title matched and was perfect. Choosing a story topic. Plan the beginning of a story. Once a writer has a topic, they can plan how their story will begin. The beginning has many jobs to do. Remember, the beginning names the characters. It tells more about who is in the story. The beginning tells the setting. It describes where and when the story takes place. And the beginning gets the reader interested in the story. It makes them want to read more. Gennard planned the beginning of his story. He put information in a chart. He knows his characters are going to be Dagan and Poppy, who is Dagan's grandpa. He knows his setting is going to be in a canoe on a lake, early in the morning, on a cold day. Gennard used the information in his chart to write the beginning of the story. So here's just the beginning, which is what I just read on the other slide. All right, let's keep going. Now we're still in Unit 5, Lesson 2. If you need this topic chart, I have it in the description, so you can actually just click on it in the video description below. But if you need to find it here, you can go back to Unit 5, Lesson 2, page 28, and you can print out this topic chart. It's your turn to be a writer. You will decide on your story topic. Then you will plan and write the beginning. Use the chart to help you plan and write your story. So this is what you're going to do. Brainstorm a list of topics and write them in the chart. Talk to your learning coach about each topic and then choose the topic you will write about. So here is my topic chart that I have completed. Here were the ideas that I had. I said, maybe I'll write about a cat that climbs up a tree. A girl and her dog go outside. A fish visits the land. Two boys win a soccer game. So all four of these are my ideas. I didn't know which one I wanted to choose, but I decided my story will be about a fish who leaves the ocean and visits dry land. So I picked right here, this third idea. A fish visits the land. Down below, I've got the beginning, just like Gennard did in his chart. My characters are going to be Skip the fish, that's his name, Skip, a pelican, and a porcupine. My setting is going to be in the shore and the forest, and it's going to happen in daytime. So here is my topic chart. This will help you when you're planning to write your narrative. So go ahead and either print that out from the description or print that out from your lesson and use that to help you plan. In your chart, make sure you take notes about the characters and tell who your story will be about. Remember, I've got Skip the fish, the pelican, the porcupine. Also take notes about the setting and decide where and when the story will take place. So yours could be at nighttime, it could be in space, wherever your setting is, you're going to describe that in that chart. Then go ahead and write the beginning of your story in your notebook. Tell about the characters and the setting. Check your beginning against the rubric. Focus on the beginning row and make any changes. So I'm going to show you, I've got my whole story written here, but I've got it separated. So this is just my beginning. That's all you need to write for now. You don't need to write the events or the ending, just the beginning. Here's my beginning. Skip the fish was exploring the ocean floor. So I've got Skip, my character, and right now he's on the ocean floor. That's my setting. He loved new things. Suddenly he gasped. There was a helmet just his size. So this is my beginning. I've introduced my character, my setting, and something exciting has happened. That's what you're going to do now, just the beginning of your story. All right, let's move on to Unit 5, Lesson 3, our new objective. In this section, you will put story events in the correct order. Events are things that happen in a story. Writers begin a story by telling about the characters and setting. In the middle of the story, they tell about events. Events are the things that happen in the story. They tell what the characters do. Writers tell the events in an order that makes sense. They start with the first event, then they tell the next event. They tell the events that come after that. At the very end, they tell the last event. Read the story and think about how the events are ordered. Lost Kitten by Tracy Riley. Alba got a new kitten. She named it Sammy. One day Sammy ran away. Alba called her friends. They hung pictures of Sammy around town. The pictures had Alba's phone number. The next day a lady called. She had found Sammy. Alba's mom drove to pick up the kitten. Alba was so happy to have Sammy back. So here are our story events. Alba's kitten Sammy ran away. Alba and her friends hung pictures of Sammy. A lady called to say she had found the kitten, and Alba and her mom got Sammy back. So those are the things that happened. The order of events. Now read the events in the middle of Gennard's story and think about how the events are ordered. They watched bugs skim over the water. Then they spotted 2 deer on the shore. After a while, they saw a small speck high in the sky. The speck got bigger and bigger as it circled closer. All of a sudden, it swooped down and grabbed a fish right out of the lake. With a few flaps of its wings, the beautiful bird flew off with its food. Dagan and Poppy smiled as they paddled back to the dock. Ask yourself, what event happened first? What event happened next? What event happened after that? And what event happens last? He had them all in order. Unit 5, Lesson 4. In this section, you will write sentences that tell the events of your story in the right order. Events are the things that happen in a story, and a topic is what the story is about. Plan and write the middle. You have already written the beginning of your story. Now it is time to work on the middle. Before you write, you will plan the events. Remember the job of the middle of a story. It tells what happens to the characters. It tells events that happen first, next, and last. And it tells about the topic. Gennard brainstormed events for the middle of a canoe ride. He took notes about his ideas. So you can see these are just notes. They're not complete sentences, and that's okay. He thinks maybe his characters should see bugs on the water, see deer on the shore, a bird flies down and grabs a fish, they make plans to go to a zoo with eagles, and they finally paddle back to the dock. One of those ideas is not in his story. That's part of what we do after we take our notes. We decide what fits in correctly and what's not really going to work, and we leave those parts out. Plan the middle of your story. Use a story chart like Gennard did. Record the events that you will tell about. So right here, if you go all the way back to this unit and this lesson, you can find the story events chart and you can print it out. I also have it in the description below. So if you don't want to go back and find it, you can just click on the link and you can print it from here. Remember what the events in the middle should do. They should tell what happens to the characters. They should tell what happens first, next, and last. And they should tell about the topic. So here is my printed story events chart. And here are my ideas. Some of these are sentences like this one, and some of them are just ideas and they're not complete sentences. That's okay. This is just planning. Here is my first event. Skip finds a helmet that he can use to leave the ocean. Next, he visits the beach. He meets a pelican. Third event, he visits the forest. He meets a porcupine. And the last event, Skip decides he belongs in the ocean and goes home. So this is my story events chart. This is not a paper, right? I don't have all of these incomplete sentences. They don't make a lot of sense written out like this, but these are all of my ideas that I'm going to write down in my personal narrative. All right. Actually, this isn't a personal narrative, is it? It's Skip's personal narrative. It's not about me. All right, now it's time to write the middle of your story. Use your story events chart. Write complete sentences. First, add a story beginning. Then, write sentences to tell about each event. Check to be sure that your events are in order. And last, check to be sure that your events all tell about the topic. So we don't want to write about different things that are not related to our story. Let's go ahead and look at my example. All of my events go right back to the ideas that I had. I've just given them a lot more details and put them in complete sentences. Here's my first event. Skip put on the helmet and swam to the shore. The dry sand was crunchy. A pelican flew down and stared. Skip just waved and kept walking. So that's one event. He went to the shore. He met a pelican. Here's my next one. Next, he came to a forest. He saw a ball of needles moving slowly. Then a face popped out of them. The strange animal told Skip that she was a porcupine. There's my next event. He goes to the forest. He meets a porcupine. All right. The land was a strange place. Skip decided to go home. Finally, he made it. There's my last event. He decides that the ocean is where he belongs, not the land. So there are all three of my events. Those ideas, remember, they came right from my story events chart. So now we have the beginning and the middle of our stories written. Let's move on to Unit 5, Lesson 5. In this section, you will add details to your story to tell what happens. Details are information about people, places, and things. So in my example I just read, I had a lot of extra details that were not in my chart. That's exactly what we do when we write our first draft. You have written a draft of the beginning and middle of your story. Now you will add details. Details can tell how something looks or feels. They can tell how something smells, tastes, or sounds. Details can help you tell more about the characters in your story. Watch the flip book, so if you go back to this lesson, there's a flip book, to see how adding details can help your readers get to know your characters. Jannard added details to a canoe ride. He wanted to tell more about the characters. He added details about what Dagan and Poppy wore. So here was his first sentence. They put on their jackets. He decided, since it was a cold day, he'd add a detail. They put on their warmest jackets. So now we're not picturing a thin, small coat. We're picturing a big, fluffy one, right? Something nice and warm. Now add details to your story. Help your characters or your readers get to know your characters. Remember what details can help readers understand. They can help them understand what the character looks like, what the characters do and how they do it, and how the characters feel and think. Talk to your learning coach about what details you want to add. Explain how the details will make your story better. Then add the details to your story. So you're going to go back and look at your own writing and any sentences that you think, hey, I can picture that or help my reader picture this a little more clearly if I add this detail. Add a detail into that sentence. It doesn't have to look perfect. You can write it right above the words. You don't have to erase and rewrite it. You can just add it right in there. And then when we do our final draft, we'll make sure we include those details. All right, so we have left Unit 5. Now we're in Unit 6, Lesson 1. In this section, our objective is you will use words that tell the order of events in a story. Our keywords are events, which are things that happen in a story, and time order words, words that tell when events happen. Events are what happen in the middle of a story. Writers use time order words to tell when events happen. Time order words tell what happens first, next, and last. So here is a chart with many, many examples of those time order words. You can see it says first, next, then, finally, while, after, before, soon, and at last. You have already read Jannard's story, A Canoe Ride. In the middle, Gennard tells what happens when the characters are in a canoe. Read that part of the story. They watched bugs skim over the water. Then they spotted 2 deer on the shore. After a while, they saw a small speck high in the sky. The speck got bigger and bigger as it circled closer. All of a sudden, it swooped down and grabbed a fish right out of the lake. So think about which words tell when Dagan and Poppy spot 2 deer, and which words tell when they see a small speck. In this section, you will add words that tell the order of events to your story. So now we're in lesson 2. Events, remember, those are the things that happen in a story. And time order words, those are the words that tell when the events happen. Careful writers tell the events of a story in order. Time order words like first, then, and last help them make the order clear to readers. Here are those time order words again for you to review. You can use these exact same words in your writing. Raya is writing a story about a skater learning to jump on the ice. She wrote the events in the middle. Then she read the sentences she wrote. See how she added time order words to her sentences. So here is her first sentence. Kieko went out on the ice. She sped up and tried to jump, but she fell. Now she added the word first. First, Kieko went out on the ice. So this is a time order word. This is what we want to add to your writing as well. Here's another sentence. This is what she had before. She tried a few more times. Each time the same thing happened. She fell again and again. Now she's added a time order word. Then she tried a few more times. So we know that that happened after the first thing. All right, here's another sentence. This is what she had before. Kieko was ready to give up. She didn't think she'd ever succeed. Right here, we've added after a while. After a while, Kieko was ready to give up. So now we know Kieko was trying for a long time, and after a while was when she gave up. These are all time order words. This is what we want to add to our writing. You have already written the middle of your story. Read your event sentences again. Think about ways to make the order of the events clearer. Add time order words to your sentences. Begin with these words or other time order words you know. So you can use these, but you can use other words you know too. So here's my writing. I'm going to go ahead and highlight the time order words that I used. I have next right here, then right here. Oh, suddenly right here. Let's see, finally, right here. So I've got some time order words in my draft already. I might be able to even add some more. I'll check that and we'll look at my final draft and see if I add even more time order words to this writing. All right, let's go ahead and move to our next lesson. We are in Unit 6, Lesson 3. In this section, you will tell how a writer ends a story. The ending is the last part of a story. You know that a story has 3 parts. You have already written the beginning and middle of a story. Now it is time to think about the ending. An ending tells what happens to the characters. A good ending can do other things too. It can explain how a character solved a problem. It can tell what the characters learn, and it can surprise readers. Here's Gennard's story. I'm just going to read the end of it, okay? Dagan and Poppy smiled as they paddled back to the dock. They couldn't believe their luck. They had seen a real bald eagle. So think about that ending. It really wraps it up, right? It lets us know that exciting event that happened. It lets us know how those characters felt about it. That's a really nice ending. Okay, lesson 4. Now it's your turn. You will write an ending for your story. Our keyword is ending, which is the last part of a story. The beginning of a story tells about the characters. The middle tells about events that happen. The ending tells what happens to the characters. It may tell how they feel or what they learned. It may tell how they solved a problem. Read Dee Dee's story. Think about the ending she wrote. The Spelling Bee by Dee Dee Foley. The spelling bee was tomorrow. Nia was excited. She had practiced spelling words for weeks. The next day, Nia looked out the window. It had snowed. The spelling bee was canceled. Nia was sad. Later that day, she heard a noise outside. She looked out the window. Her friends were outside holding a big sign. It said, Nia's Spelling Bee. Nia and her friends had a spelling bee in her yard. Nia won. She thought it was the best spelling bee ever. So just these bolded words down here at the beginning, this is the ending of her story. It wraps it up, it finishes it, and completes it. It is time to end your story. Remember the jobs the endings can have. They tell what happens to the characters. They explain how the characters solved a problem. They show how the characters learn a lesson. First, reread your story. Think about the characters and what they do. Decide what happens to them and make sure your readers will feel good about it. Then write an ending. Your ending can be one or more sentences. So remember, we've got our story events chart, and here is my last event, so that's going to be in my ending. Skip decides he belongs in the ocean and goes home. So let's look at what I wrote. Here's my ending down here in this box. The ocean felt cool and wet. He took off his helmet. He wasn't going to need it anymore. He's decided land is not where a fish belongs. So I've got 3 sentences. Your ending does not have to be 3 sentences. It can be 1, 2, or 3. Just something to wrap up your story and complete it. Unit 6, Lesson 5. In this section, you will read your story again to make sure it has a beginning, a middle, and an ending. Here are the key words. Characters are the people or animals that a story is about. Events are things that happen in a story. The setting is where a story takes place. And time order words are words that tell when events happen. You have written a draft of your story. Now review your draft. Read it carefully. Ask questions about the 3 parts. Does the beginning tell about the characters? Does it describe the setting? If yes, you're good to go. Does the middle tell about events that happen? Do time order words make the order of events clear? If yes, then you're good to go. Does the ending tell what happens to the characters? Does it leave readers feeling glad that they read the story? If yes, then you're good to go. All right, so you're going to turn in that draft to your teacher as well. It's not for your portfolio, although you will turn it in again, but you actually have a different lesson that's just turning in the first draft. So if you're watching this video before you've gotten to your portfolio, this is where you'll stop when you turn in your first draft. Once we get ready to submit the full portfolio, this is where you'll pick up right around minute 25. All right, so objective. We are in Unit 8, Lesson 1. In this section, you will revise your story. Revise means to reread what you have written and make changes. You have written a first draft of your story. Now it is time to revise. Reread your draft carefully, then make changes. Add details that make the story clearer. Take out parts that are unclear. Your changes will make your story better. A checklist can help you revise. It may have questions like these. Can I add details that tell more about the characters and setting? Can I make the order of events clearer? And do all the details tell about what happens? So you're going to take your first draft and you're going to look at this revising checklist. You can go back to Unit 8, Lesson 1 to find it. And I also have it linked below if you need to find it. All right, here's a canoe ride. Here's our topic chart, our story events chart, and here's our revising checklist. So these, you don't have to print this out. You can just look at this if you want to. It's in the description below. This is just telling you what you need to have included or what you need to think about when you revise and improve your paper. All right, so there's that checklist if you want it from the lesson. Read each version and then think about why the writer made changes. So this is revision. These writers are revising their sentences. First, it says, John and Lay took their dog for a walk. After, it says, John and Lay took Sparky for a walk in the park. How did the writer revise the sentence? And why do you think they made the revision? Well, I think if the dog Sparky is going to be an important character, it's good that we know his name, right? So they gave the dog a name. All right, let's look at another example. The grass was wet. It had rained. Today is Thursday. After, it says the grass was wet. It had rained last night. So sometimes when we revise, we add details like up here. Sometimes we take away details. Today is Thursday. That's not super important, right? It doesn't really tell our character anything except the day of the week. We don't really need to know that. So they took out that unimportant detail. Now revise your story. First, review your rubric. We're going to look at that at the end, remember, but you can also click on it and look at it now. Focus on the first 3 rows. Think about what they ask you to do. Read your story again. Ask yourself the questions on the revising checklist. Can I add details that tell more about the characters and setting? Can I make the order of events clearer? Do all the details tell about what happens? So here is my story for my published draft, which we're going to look at later on as well. And if you see red or blue, that's where I've done revising. So revising is when you take out parts or you add parts to make things clearer. Oh, you know what? I added this too. So I also need to put this in blue. Bloop. All right, so this is my revision. You can see that I've got revisions in red, I've got revisions in blue, and that's exactly what you want to do. You want to take out parts that you don't really need, and you want to add things that make your story clearer or more detailed. Mark up your draft. Show the changes that you want to make to your learning coach. Tell them about your ideas. Finally, make the changes to your draft. Then read your story again. Tell your learning coach how the changes make your writing better. All right, let's move on to Unit 8, Lesson 2. In this section, you will edit your story. Edit means to reread what you write and fix mistakes. Careful writers reread their work many times. They look for mistakes they can fix. They edit their writing. Mistakes in writing make it harder for your reader to understand what you are saying. A checklist can help you edit your story. It has questions you can ask yourself as you read your draft. Are all the sentences complete? Are adjectives and adverbs used correctly? Do proper nouns begin with a capital letter? Remember, any character name is going to be a proper noun. Do possessive nouns have an apostrophe and an S at the end? And are all words spelled correctly? So right here in Lesson 2 of Unit 8, there's an editing checklist. I also have it in the description below. Let's go ahead and look at that together. You don't need to print this out. It's just those same questions for you to refer to. You can just have this open on your computer and thinking about it when you do your editing. So let's go ahead and look at what editing I need to do. I see that I've got uppercase letters at the beginning of most of my sentences, but I do see this little red squiggly down here. What does this mean? What is that word? Amnal? What is that? Ah, I meant to spell animal and I made a mistake when I was typing. So this is editing. Fixing spelling mistakes is part of editing. If I look down here, I can also see I've got a lowercase letter. I was typing too fast and I didn't put an uppercase letter at the beginning of my sentence. That's editing too. So that's what you're going to do. You're going to go through and look for any mistakes in your paper. You can also have your learning coach check for you and see if they spot any mistakes as well. Practice editing. Read the sentences from a writer's story. This is what they have first. It was cold, so Leela walked her dog quick. That doesn't sound quite right. After, they made a correction. They edited. It was cold, so Leela walked her dog quickly. What mistake does the writer fix? Quick is not correct. You need that ly to make it an adverb. How did she walk her dog? She walked her dog quickly. So she made that spelling correction and grammar correction. Now, edit your story. First, check the rubric. Read the row labeled sentences and spelling. The information may help you figure out what to do. Read your story again carefully. Ask the questions on your editing checklist and look for other mistakes too. So these are those same questions I just read. Go ahead and review those and make sure that you've checked for those editing mistakes. You can use sticky notes or colored pencils to mark each mistake on your draft. Then you can decide how to fix the mistakes. Tell your ideas to your learning coach. When you are ready, make the changes to your draft. Then reread your story again and tell your learning coach how each change makes your writing better. All right, Unit 8, Lesson 3. In this section, you will publish your story. Publish means to make a final copy and share it with others. Writers write stories for people to enjoy, so they publish their work. They share their writing with others. To publish a story, writers make a final copy. They include all the changes they have made. They make sure the final copy is neatly typed or written. That makes it easy for readers to read. Add a picture. You can even make your story more interesting by adding a picture. Pictures can help your readers see where the story takes place. They can help bring your characters to life. Careful writers plan before they write, and they plan before they publish too. Jannard thought about how he would publish his story. He decided to make a book. He would put each part of the story on a different page, and he would draw a picture on each page too. Jannard made a plan for his book, and he started with the title page. Read Jannard's plan. So he wants to publish an entire book. You don't have to do that for your portfolio. For your portfolio, you're just turning in your written draft that's written in your handwriting and your final published draft that's typed on the computer. Now, if you want to add a picture and include that as well, I'm sure your teacher would love to see it. It's not required though, so don't worry about it. This is Jannard's plan to make a whole book. If you want to do that, you absolutely may, but you do not have to. Final copy. Careful writers make sure their final copy is neat and easy to read. Some writers use a computer to type their final copy. Other writers like to handwrite their final copy instead. Jannard used a computer, and you are going to too. He typed each page of his story. His learning coach helped him add the pictures he drew, and he put the words at the bottom of his pages. He put the pictures at the top of his pages. Jannard read his story when he was done, and he made sure there were no mistakes. All right, so let's go ahead and look at my final copy. I've got those different colored words to show you my revising and editing, but I don't want those when I turn it in. So I'm going to go ahead and make all of these match. I don't want these to be in different colors. That's just when I'm editing and revising, right? That's just so I can see the mistakes quickly. So this is going to be my final draft. I have my title, Fish Out of Water, by Mrs. C. I'm the author. Let's read it together and see if that editing and revising made it make a little bit more sense and sound a little better. Skip the fish was exploring the ocean floor. Suddenly, he gasped. There was a helmet full of water just his size. Quickly, Skip put on the helmet and swam to the shore. The dry sand was crunchy on his fins. A pelican flew down and stared. Skip just waved and kept walking. Next, he came to a forest. He saw a ball of needles moving slowly. Then a face popped out of them. The strange animal told Skip that she was a porcupine. The land was a strange place. Skip decided to go home. Finally, he made it. The ocean water felt cool and wet. He took off his helmet. He wasn't going to need it anymore. So, as you can see in my final draft, I also did these indentions and I wrote it in 5-paragraph essay form. This is really good practice for you, but it's not required either. You saw Jannard's example. He had one large paragraph. Since we already had our organization done with our events in order on our planning sheet, I thought it'd be good practice to go ahead and break this down into the introduction, that's the beginning, 3 of the events, that's the middle, my 3 paragraphs, and my conclusion or my ending right down here. I think it's really good practice if you want to do that too, but if you want to do 1 paragraph, that is okay. All right, let's move on to Unit 8, Lesson 4. We're finally going to turn in this portfolio. In this section, you will present your story to your learning coach. Our keywords are present, which means to tell about a text as people listen, and publish, which means to make a final copy and share it with others. Writers write stories for readers to enjoy. That is why they like to share the stories they publish. How can you share your story? Here are some ideas. Ask your family to read your story. Have them say what they thought of the characters and events. Email your story to someone who lives far away. Start a story club. Ask your friends to write their own stories. Then take turns reading everyone's stories. Leave your story at the library. Talk to the children's librarian. Maybe they can read your story during a story hour. One way writers share their stories is to present them. When you present a story, you read it aloud and you show your pictures too. Presenting a story takes practice. Practice helps you get better at reading your story. It makes your story more fun for others to hear. Soon you will present your own story. Your learning coach will be your audience. Here is what you can do to get ready. First, read your story out loud a few times. Make sure you know how to say all of the words. Second, read your story again. This time, practice reading at a good speed. Speed a little more quickly at exciting parts. Speak a little more slowly when something important happens. So you're going to read your story out loud to your learning coach. You don't have to worry about presenting it to your homeroom teacher. You're just going to turn in those two drafts. So if you go to the next page, page 20 in Unit 8, Lesson 4, this is where you turn in that narrative writing process portfolio. Remember, you've already turned in your written first draft in Unit 6, I believe, but you're going to turn in your written draft with those edits and revisions. You're going to turn that into your teacher too. The other important part that you're going to turn in that's required is that final written draft. So it looks just like this. Before we go, let's look at our rubric to make sure we haven't forgotten anything. This will help make sure that we get the very best grade. In the beginning, make sure if you want all 3 points that the beginning clearly names the characters and describes your setting. In the middle, if you want all 3 points, make sure the writer includes 3 or more events about the topic in order, and time order words are used to make the event order clear. Add interesting details to tell how the characters look, think, and feel. You need all of these if you want all 3 points for your middle. In the ending, make sure you tell what happens to the character and make sure you show how the character learns a lesson or solves a problem, how they feel at the end of that story. Publishing and presenting, make sure that you turn in a narrative text that is typed well with few or no errors, no mistakes, and the handwriting is neat and easy to read. So on this one, you don't have to worry about handwriting because you're typing it well. On your draft, make sure that your teacher can read it. It might be a little bit messy because you're going to have the editing and the revision. That's okay. Just make sure that you can read it a bit. All right, and then for conventions and vocabulary, you just want to make sure that you're doing everything correctly, that you write complete and varied sentences. They don't all sound the same. That you have uppercase letters or capitalization and also ending punctuation. So those are your periods, your question marks, your exclamation points. Make sure that you use commas, apostrophes, and contractions correctly if you have any of those. Use subject-verb agreement and regular verb endings. So if someone's doing something right now, remember they are running. If someone did it in the past, then maybe they jumped. Make sure if there's more than one, you wash the dishes. Make sure that you've got that subject-verb agreement and regular verb endings used correctly. And then also verb tenses across paragraphs. Make sure that your story makes sense. Make sure that you add those adjectives and adverbs. Those are going to be those details. So that's your descriptive vocabulary. And make sure that you spell words correctly if it's something you know how to spell. If not, you can always ask your learning coach for help. All right, anything that's a sight word that you've previously studied, those should definitely be spelled correctly because you've already learned those. If you do all of that, I am quite certain you will get as close to this 15 points as possible. You might get the full 15 or very, very close. All right, so remember, this is where you're going to turn this in, page 20 of Unit 8, Lesson 4. I know if you go through all of these steps, you're going to have an amazing narrative written. I'm sure your story is going to be super fun and super cool, and your homeroom teacher is going to love it. I'll see you next time. Thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.